Hey everyone, I'm Mark from Business Growth Talks, and today we have a journey and an experiences from Feras Alhlou. From a tech engineer to an entrepreneurial guru, discover how he transformed challenges into triumphs from Silicon Valley startups to international business success. Dive into the insights of scaling businesses, mastering sales, and the art of strategic growth. Learn from Ferris's unique blend of professional expertise and personal passions, shaping a path of risk taking, continuous learning, and balancing success. Tune into this masterclass in transforming ideas into impactful realities with Feras Alhlou. If you're enjoying this content, please do give it a thumbs up. Please do hit me down in the comments if you've got anything to say about Feras. And equally, please do hit the subscribe button. I'm really trying to grow this channel, and that subscription makes such a huge difference to the algorithm. So please do consider, if you are enjoying this content, to hit the subscribe button. And on to the interview. Today we have Feras Alhlou. Feras has more than 20 years experience as an entrepreneur. He initially was a hardware engineer but didn't love it, so he went to his CEO and said that he wanted to be involved more in the business. Feras has founded, grown and sold businesses in Silicon Valley and overseas. In 2019, Feras sold his digital marketing company to Dentsu, a top five global media company. He now acts as a mentor to startups, giving guidance on business strategy, consulting, marketing, and sales. Ferris is also passionate about supporting non-profits with his time. He additionally has some side interests, including martial arts, which helps him with his business mentoring. Ferris is based in California, USA. If you're enjoying this content, then please do consider subscribing, and then you won't miss an episode. Hello, Ferris. How are you today?
Hi, Mark. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being with me. So, the first question I ask everyone on my show is, what does a business mindset mean to you?
Business mindset. I'm all about getting stuff done, about execution. And I think one of the quotes that I like the most is by Steve Jobs. He said when he was hiring people, he was looking for thinker doers. Uh, and I interact with a lot of entrepreneurs. On the average, one or two founders are reaching out for help or advice. And people have a lot of ideas. Founders have a lot of ideas, but they don't, ideas, as we say here, are a dime a dozen. In my mind, it's all about execution. So it's okay. You want to have a plan. You want to do a market research. You want to do product research. You want to do identify your target audience. You want to do all the solid components of a business plan and do research those well. At the end of the day, you got to put pen to paper, write that business plan, and then you got to execute. So I'm big on getting stuff done. I'm big on execution.
Yeah, so that sort of get shit done is very much in the mindset for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with it because there's a people can procrastinate and they can have analysis paralysis and they can have a really great idea, but unless you go out and get sales and actually sell your product or service, you're not going to have a business, you're going to have a hobby. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you talk about sales. When we started our first business, our first startup, I had zero background in sales.
Right.
And at the time, this is, I don't know, 20 years ago,
Mm.
there, YouTube wasn't a thing at the time. So I remember buying a set of CDs. I'm dating myself now, and listening to these things and taking notes. And what do you say if the customer said this? And what do you say if they said that? And took a couple of sales courses. That's all good and dandy. But at the end of the day, you have to go out, knock on doors, ask people to buy your service, as you said, Mark. So yeah, it is. You got to just go out there and do it. Whether you're an early stage startup, you just started, you're thinking about starting, or whether you're, as since your podcast is about growth, whether you've been around for a few years and you're say at $200,000, $300,000 a year in terms of revenue, and you want to go to that seven-figure revenue goal, you got to take some bold action. You got to go and explore the market, talk to maybe bigger companies than you're used to. So it's all, I think, about being out there and just doing the work, doing the hard work.
Yeah. Who ran the CDs? Who was the speaker on the
I'm
CDs? Do you
trying.
remember?
It
Do you
was
remember?
actually it was a real estate some real estate sales guru. I remember he had this Christmas shirt on. I don't remember the name now, but it'll come to me in a second. But it was
Okay.
a red package with this guy with this big smile, Pop's real estate guru. Although I wasn't doing a real estate,
Mm,
but all the tips he talked about the follow-ups. One thing I remember, Mark said, sales about follow-up. You gotta when he used to travel and he would write thank you notes or like just ask about
mm,
people's families and children and work and just staying in touch with customers. So that's to me, that's all work. You just got to put the
mm.
hours, you got to put the time.
Yeah. And were you naturally made for sales, or was it something that you learned over the years?
No, no, I started as an engineer, as you mentioned. And then after 3 years into it, I was doing okay, but there was a major layoff at the time. I think we had 300 people in that company. I was in Florida at the time. And I think the layoff impacted half of the business, half of the company. And I was saved, I was not impacted. But then it occurred to me, like, it could have been me. And I was doing okay, but I wasn't getting this exceptional performance in my reviews. So I figured this is not clicking. Engineering is not clicking. So I mustered all the courage I had and walked into the CEO office. His name is Russ. And I said, hey, Russ, I love what I'm doing, but I like project management, be closer to sales and marketing.
Mm,
And I remember I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I wasn't sure if he was going to ask me to leave. So to me, that was a big, courageous step. But he said, hey, do you mind traveling? I said, no. He said, okay, we have this opening for project management to go and be closer on the client sites. And within a month, we transitioned, and I loved what I was doing, and I excelled at it. And then I was always close to sales and marketing, but I never did sales
okay.
till later when I started my own business. Yeah.
So I've got another question I want to ask you, but I'm just interested. Like you said, it took you everything to walk through that door. I'm just trying to visualize, like in my head, standing outside that door. You've got an established career as an engineer, and actually going in and saying, after redundancies have been made as well, going in and saying, this is not for me. I want something different. How did you prepare for that? Because that's a potential life, well, it was a life-changing situation for you. How did you approach it?
It sure was. It sure was, Mark. I still remember, I vividly remember, I was sitting in a cubicle and the executives had actually glass walls and you can see them from where I was sitting. And it took me a couple of weeks to think about it, talk to my wife about it. And I think 20 years ago, I don't think in terms of openness and transparency, and today the workforce is different. At the time, again, just right after layoff, I was, it was an easy decision, but I figured I'm going to get laid off if I'm not excelling, if I'm not doing really
Right.
well in my role. And I have a family and 3 children at the time. And I figured I want to do something that I enjoy and something I have maybe better skills for. So I just decided to just walk in and I said, hey, Ross, do you have a few minutes? And he was a very welcoming person and
Okay.
he was understanding. And he had recently been appointed as a CEO and he was, I think, bringing in a better culture.
Mm.
So that was encouraging. But yeah, I did have to. I was breathing hard. I was shaking. I hid all of that, but it was real.
Yeah, your
Yeah,
poker face came out, did it? Your poker face came out just
absolutely.
to
Yeah, yeah.
stay calm.
It worked out really well. It worked out really well. And I think that's part about if I just thought about it and didn't do anything about it, I probably would have been stuck as an unhappy, mediocre engineer and potentially have maybe gotten laid off in the next round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well done, you. Amazing. All right, moving on. Tell me one thing about your upbringing which reflects on who you are today.
Upbringing. So let's see. How,
How far back do you want to tell me? It's
yeah.
completely open.
Yeah. So I don't know. I have 2 sisters and a brother, and there's a gap between 2 sisters are 15 years older, 13 year older, and then my brother is 11 years older. So there's a gap. So my siblings, they say I'm the spoiled one. They went through a lot of hardship when they were growing up, and then my family was doing better when I was growing up. So I don't know. I argue that a lot, but we moved to the States when I was 17, right after high school, to Oklahoma, middle of the country. And I went to school there and had to learn about a new culture, a new language, and worked to make some extra money. My family supported me for most of my college, but I did work to do things on the weekend and to have more fun. You needed more cash. So I did work in a restaurant, and I started as a dishwasher. Then I was promoted to a busboy, then to a waiter, salad man and salad boy, whatever. And then, so in terms of working hard, I think that was, I went through that from my college days. Both my mom and dad worked hard. She was a teacher, and then he used to travel a lot and work really hard. So I think those work ethics about just working hard these are really important to me. And my motto is work hard, play hard. And that's what I tell folks, founders, entrepreneurs. If you want to grow, if you want to make it big, there are no shortcuts. So I think that those work ethics and I think surrounding yourself with those who want to achieve, want to grow is important.
Mm. Do you think entrepreneurship was always within you?
I think about this. I always had the idea of doing something on my own. Maybe we hear about it all the time. Maybe it's something
Mm.
that we all, or most of us, aspire to do. But it had to be a major life event for me to take that step. It
Right.
was a layoff. We had moved from Florida to the Bay Area, to Silicon Valley in 1998. And then there was the bubble, and the bubble
Yeah.
burst happened. And I was actually in a startup where I was one of the management team members, where we raised $96 million. It was an infrastructure type startup at the time.
Okay.
But then we were out of money. We were ahead of the market. I was laid off in 2003. I started to look for a job right away. It was a really tough market at the time. And I couldn't find anything for maybe 6, 7 weeks. And then I ran into a friend of mine, and he was thinking about starting a business, and said, okay, I can't find it. I'm not finding a job. Might as well start a business.
Right.
And I wasn't sure. I think for the first couple of months, I wasn't sure. But once we closed that first deal, I said, okay, I think I can make this work. Yeah. So it was more, I would say, more of that layoff forced me to get into this entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. It like the sort of serendipitous move of something happens and your life changes and priorities change. So it could be a layoff. My very quick backstory is I had multiple bereavements in my life and decided that the corporate life wasn't for me, and I wanted to try doing it for myself, which has turned into being a great life choice, and I've very much enjoyed it. But it is, there usually is some, if you don't start a business at 18 or 20 or whatever, I'm talking to people on my show, there's usually a trigger point, an event, something that happened that changes your mindset into an entrepreneur. Because I think some people are born entrepreneurs, but I had to learn how to be an entrepreneur. I think I was being entrepreneurial in my corporate job, but it was a period of sort of personal development and professional development, which meant that I was bold enough to be able to make that choice. When you said you were unsure initially about taking that step, what for you was making you uncertain to just go bold and say, look, I'll start this business with you?
Yeah, I think we get, no, thank you for sharing your background. And we get used to the paycheck. You know, we get used to the benefits. We get used to in the US, to the 401k plan,
Yeah.
the retirement plan. We get used to just in that rhythm, in that system. And I think I was trying to remember the name of the book I read earlier last year by the co-founder of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman. Yep. He said, The Startup of You. And he said, we were all born entrepreneurs back in the cave days. We had to go and venture
Yeah.
out and do things. Over time, entrepreneurship is not for most of us. That's what he said. And I do agree with him. I think
Yeah. Me too.
starting your own business, it just requires, there are a lot of unknowns. There's the financial aspect of things, especially if
Mm.
you have obligations, family, whatnot. There's just being out there and having to sell. Most people just don't have that skill. So I think all these, and I think I have a, right before the holidays, I had a live stream on the fears of starting a business. And I think then one of the top fears is the financial aspect and the fear of failing. Some significant number of people who think of starting a business, I think 60% of the US population at one point in their
Right.
time,
Wow.
they think about starting a business, that only, I forgot the exact percentage, I think 9% or so actually, pursue it. So I think all these constraints, limitations, things we put in our mind that typically slow us down or prevent us from taking that leap. But I tell people it's a journey worth taking, but it's not for everyone. So you have to be ready, you have to be prepared.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's a mindset of people that they've got to be bold, they've got to make decisions, they've got to take. So one of the questions which I often ask, and I suppose I can ask this to you now, is about risk and risk tolerance. And so, what would you say your risk tolerance is after running four businesses, selling multiple ones, and you're in this place of your life where you're now a mentor, helping startups? But what's your risk appetite now, and has that changed over the years?
That's a good question. So yeah, now is different than before. I think there's a dimension to risk taking with what's at stake, what's the worst case scenario.
Mm.
If today, after all these years in business, and we're fortunate to be in a good financial place, if one of the businesses I'm involved in doesn't take off, if we have to shut it down, I'm still okay. I'll be very sad. I'll be very disappointed. I'll do a huge postmortem and see what's going on, what happened. But early on, I, and I don't talk about this a lot, but at one point I tapped into not only our savings, but into our retirement plan, our 401k plan here, which is
Right,
typically in the US, you don't touch it because there's also a 10% penalty
right,
if you withdraw the money before you're 59 and a half, I believe.
right.
So at one point, a couple of years, the first 2, 3 years of the business, that first business, they were really challenging. We were getting sales very slowly and we saw the potential, but it was just not, it wasn't enough for us to stay afloat. So I had to tap into my 401k plan. I actually depleted my savings. I had an amazingly supportive wife. She was on board with what I was doing. I kept her in the loop throughout the whole process.
Sure.
So that type of risk is and in that scenario is completely different than now when you're doing okay financially, right? So at the time, after putting 60, 70 hours a week and seeing the light, seeing the potential,
Mm.
and doing all the due diligence, I think it's okay. And I felt comfortable and confident that we can make it work. So I took bigger risks. And that's, I think, where, you have to look at what's at stake. And I think you also, one last thing here is you start to take smaller risk. You become better at risk taking.
Yes.
You don't want to just go and take a loan on your house, for example, and you just haven't vetted the idea. So
Yeah,
I think
it's
the more
I
do, I think, yeah, go
sorry, I
ahead,
was just
sorry.
going to say it's about mitigating risk, something I'm obsessed about. I'm happy to take risks to an extent, but I've got to think of the downside. What is the end result if it goes wrong? What does that actually mean to the business, to your life, to your family, or whatever? So I think the older you get, the more it's I still think you take risks, but it's more you have a greater understanding of how to mitigate the risks when you're taking them than when you're younger and you might make a decision a bit more rashly.
And for your audience, those who are starting or those who are thinking about growth, I think the number one thing to do is be do your due diligence. In a book I also read last year, Why Startups Fail. Forget the name of the author now, but he's at Harvard, and I think he heads the startup department there.
Right.
He said one of the number one reason why startups fail, they don't do enough market research. And so
Mm,
so in terms of risk taking, it's one thing to talk to a friend of yours and, oh, I have this great idea and let me borrow money and start this business. That is, you're not taking calculated risk. You're not being prudent. Do your due diligence. I'm not saying you have to come up with a 100-page business plan.
mm,
That's too much planning. but do your due diligence, do some market research, look who else is offering this service. All the things you do in a business plan.
Yeah.
And then, yes, you have to take some risk. But what I see with most founders I speak with is, or aspiring founders, is they haven't done enough preparation.
Right.
It's just an idea. I'm excited about it. I'm sick and tired of my day job. I want to do something different. Yes, these are all good motivations, maybe, but you gotta do the planning. You gotta do some of that vetting of your idea and the
Yeah.
market.
I would 100% agree with that. All right, let's fast forward to Enor. Why did you set it up in 2003? What was where were you in your life at that stage?
Yeah, we've pivoted. We built a few other companies along the way, but we did keep the Enor brand from the very beginning till the very end. So that was the dawn of digital marketing, 2002, 2003. We built that business to basically help small businesses establish digital presence, basically have a website and do some online marketing.
Yeah.
And we had to learn everything at the time. It took us, I remember the first client I mentioned earlier. It was a small Greek restaurant, still around here in Santa Clara, California.
Okay.
And our first project, I don't know, it took us a month to convince the client to buy from us. It was $1,400 for a 4-page website. Today, you can go on GoDaddy.com and get that 4-page website up in probably 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So it took us, I don't know, 6 weeks we had to do everything from like with HTML and all. And we didn't know anything about it. So that was the first, I think, that wave of businesses wanting to be on the internet, and they want to market using search engine optimization and pay-per-click and
Yeah.
those and email marketing. Those were like cutting edge at the time.
Yeah.
And we felt, my business partner and I felt we would ride that wave and get ahead of it. And it paid off really well for us. We started with working with small businesses, very small businesses. And then later we started to work with Fortune 500, bigger companies, and then ended up working with Fortune 500.
So I'm interested. So as the show is about growing and scaling businesses, so from that small Greek restaurant round the corner to Fortune 500, and I know there's many steps in between, but I'm just
Yeah.
thinking, when you are at that point where you've progressed from a startup and you're now established, you've got a portfolio of clients and money's coming in, and you're taking that next step. So say you've got 1 million revenue and you're then looking to the sort of 5 million, the 10 million revenue. For you, how did you work out to transition from smaller SMEs into those larger businesses?
Yeah. So a couple of things to give you some context. So we kept that business here doing websites and online marketing. We set up another company overseas, an offshore development. So that was another venture. Sold that one. And so as we were working with smaller businesses, I had, my background was in working with larger businesses. So in the startup that I was part of, and also before we moved to California, we were working with top telecommunication companies, AT&T and
Right.
Cox. And so I had that background in terms of working, the polished approach to selling and delivering to high-end clients. So that wasn't something we had to learn. I think we had to really focus on being an expert in our domain. And that took several years in my mind. And we also, another dimension is we pivoted and we focused on one thing, and that's about digital analytics.
Yes.
So we went from selling website design, web development, online marketing, you name it, to pivoting the company to focus on digital analytics, web analytics. At the time, mobile wasn't a thing. And we ended up getting all the certifications and all the, I would say, at the time, the Google certification specifically, and becoming a certified Google partner was a major point in our journey. Because once you became known in your small niche, once you get the right certifications, the right affiliations, then these larger companies start to notice you. And I remember the first lead, we got listed on this Google authorized Google partners list. And we started to get leads and we're tracking where the leads are coming from
Right.
because we're an analytics company. The first lead we got, it was an e-commerce client. I think it was called Karma Loop. They might be still around. And I remember we used to sell these audits for $500 for small businesses. And then just talking to this new customer, the new lead, and with the millions of dollars in revenue that they're making, we upped our pricing to $5,000 right there. Because not
Yeah.
we give them a whole lot more hours, a whole
Yeah.
lot more attention.
Yeah.
I don't think we made a whole lot of money on that project because we put so much into it because that was our really first big project,
Mm,
relatively speaking, at the time.
mm.
So I think that two things: developing the subject matter expertise, knowing mastering your domain is really important, and then getting the certifications, the affiliations, so that you're noticed in your space. Those helped us a lot.
So the idea of partnerships, I've talked to people before on my show about growing from small, medium enterprises into sort of corporates into larger companies. And he said that partnerships are super important. Professionalism is obviously super important. You talked about mastering your domain. Still, all of these things, which are really important. But I just want to delve into that before you won that client and that client came to you that was the e-commerce, the large client, what were you, was the plan always to make that leap, or was it that the partnership brought those people to you and then you pivoted and changed your offering? You, as you said, you raised prices, etc.
So after the first, so the first year, I wasn't still sure if this is gonna be the thing or not
Okay.
because we were struggling. We were barely making it. So small businesses, $1,000 here, $1,000 there. But then once, I think after the second year, and then I had a business partner, we brought in a part-time helper. We figured this is it. Now we're covering our basic expenses. This is going to be it. We believe in it and we want to grow it. So I think that was really important is once we believed it was viable, it's something that we can make a living off of, then we put a whole lot of energy and money to grow that business. And the growth was always there. And I think that's really important. And when I speak with entrepreneurs, I say, you got to make a decision. You want to be a solopreneur, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
You can do amazingly well and be a solopreneur, and you probably can grow to and maybe cap your income at a certain level, unless you become the $1 million consultant type or speaker and all. That's sort of a different path. But if you want to grow the business, you want to hire people, and you want to create an amazing culture, and you want to serve larger clients, then it's all about growth. As who said that? Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, he said,
Yeah.
life is about growth, grow or die. So you don't want to be, yeah, just maintaining status quo. I think growth is really important. And that was right. Once we thought it was a viable thing and we saw some early results that, and we believed in it, in the business, we were just putting all of our energy and resources into it.
And I always think this when I'm talking to people on the show, and the top revenue number, the top line, the revenue that you bring in, I bring in £1 million, £10 million, £100 million, whatever it is an interesting metric. But actually, to have a really good business, you need to be profitable. And that's the killer metric. That's going to make or break your business. And we all, some people get on this ego of this huge revenue number, but they're making no money out of it at all. How do you talk to, we're moving on to your mentoring now. How do you work with with your clients and thinking with them about talking to them about profitability rather than revenue?
Yeah, revenue is important. Revenue is very important as but there and initially maybe the first year or two, you might be breaking even, you might be maybe losing a little bit of money here and there. But as you have payroll, as you have obligations to vendors, as you have to pay maybe rent for a larger space, you got to be profitable. If you have obligations at home, they'll be asking where how long are you going to
Yeah.
be living in this tight situation for. So I think focusing on revenue top line is important. And of course, being profitable is going to be super important. I think you got to look at some basic business principles in terms of, okay, I'm spending a lot of money on marketing. Okay, what's working, what's not, maybe optimize there. Am I making the right hires? Am I doing things inefficiently in terms of back office? I remember me doing my own accounting for many years in that first business was probably the silliest thing I had ever done. I'm still sending invoices. I'm still trying to collect money, outsourcing this or bringing someone in to help you with all that back office
Mm.
um, type work. So you can focus on being out there selling. And if you're the consultant type, delivering quality work. So I think examining where sort of the expenses and how you can be efficient and save money. And obviously also looking on how you can increase your margins by maybe increasing your prices, maybe finding the right clients, and a number of factors. So you have to look at the top line, you have to look at the expenses and gradually move into very nice margins because that will allow you to invest, that will allow you to take more money home, that will allow you to, if you want to sell the business, that's going to be an important factor in determining your valuation.
Before we go too much more into your mentoring, which we're going to go into soon, one of my favorite questions asking entrepreneurs and business owners is about selling businesses. So tell me about your first experience. So the first business you sold, and what pitfalls and mistakes did you make versus the last one that you sold Enor to, where you made a really nice sale. I'm just trying to see my notes where it just like
Yeah,
to Enor.
yeah, we were eight figures at the time. For initial, the first one initially, you don't know. It's all about experience,
Yeah.
and I think people go cheap on account founders, business owners. I shouldn't generalize, but initially on lawyers, on accountants, uh, and then you learn the hard way. So um, not defining because we sold the first sale part of the business, not the whole business.
Okay.
So not defining what's involved, not defining what resources will go with that business, what that initial amount versus the payouts or earnouts, being casual about it, especially if the buyer and the seller, they know each other, they're friends, they're business partners. This stuff has to be well documented. You got to get specialists in there. It's going to cost you some money, but it will save you a whole lot of headache in the future,
Yeah.
especially with friends and family members. You want to do more documentation in my mind. And I have a
Right.
video on working with partners, working with family members, because the trust level is high. So we tend to ignore important details. So my recommendation would be, and what I learned from the first sale is just go through the process in a
Right.
formal way, bring in a specialist, make sure everything is well documented, the due
Yeah.
diligence process have been gone through. Otherwise you'll end up with you being unhappy, or the other party unhappy, to ruin relationships. Luckily, they didn't have any serious issues, but we had to deal with some issues between the seller and the buyer.
And what about Enor? So you were a lot more experienced. You'd been through it a few times. You sold to a large company, one of the largest media companies. Mm, What did you do in like? I suppose my question is related to like, how did they look to you? Did they come to you, or were you looking to exit and therefore you were looking for
Sure.
the best buyer?
Yeah, we wanted to exit, do the Silicon Valley thing at the time. So we actually learning from past mistakes and also speaking with other business founders, which again, a pro tip here for your listeners, leverage your networks, speak with other business owners and founders. They're willing to share, they'll help you a lot. But so speaking with other business owners, people who sold before in our space, we ended up hiring a financial advisor, a company that specialized in selling companies similar to our size in our domain.
Right.
And they're not cheap. They might charge you, I don't know, 30, 3, 4, 5, 6% of the transaction. So it's not going to be cheap, but that's what they do for a living.
Yeah.
So they will walk you through the entire process. They'll package you better. They'll have you meet a whole lot of suitors. They'll help you with negotiation. They'll review the documents. So when it's time to sell the company, you need a group of advisors. You need obviously an attorney. you need CFO type, you need obviously the financial advisor, the broker. So those, probably a couple other things, but those are probably the main advisors you want to have. And again, it's not going to be cheap, but if you're serious about selling, especially if you're profitable and you have good margins, you're going to have a good multiplier, then you could afford to pay for these services.
Yeah.
And then I think it will help you get a better deal.
And so why did you transition after the sale into helping startups? I saw a number that you're helping currently about 150 startups in your consultancy. Is that right?
Yeah. So in over the last maybe 10 years or so. So I think once we started to be more profitable, and I used to go and speak at conferences, and we published a book in 2016. So I started to get, maybe over the last 10 years or so, get people just asking for help or asking for career advice. And I never charge for this. So and even now, on our website, we have, anyone can sign up. We have a few slots every week, 30-minute session, no charge whatsoever. We don't sell anything. I'm there to help entrepreneurs. A lot of people help me. This is my way of saying thank you to them. They're back to the community. So in 2016, like I was there speaking at conferences. A lot of people would come and ask questions. I would help. And then when we sold the business, I figured, okay, I have a lot of experience in the startup thing. Do I write a book about it? I said, I already wrote a book. So I've done that. Let me try something different. So we started this business, startup with Feras, to help early stage founders, mainly in the services and consulting space.
Yeah.
It was more of a hobby, part-time. I was just trying to figure out YouTube, I'm still trying to figure out YouTube.
Yeah, it's a tricky beast, admittedly.
So then till the fast forward to the second part of 2023, that's when I went full time at it. I have a business partner, Eric, now, and we had our first hire in Q4. So now this is I put most of my time into this venture. And the idea is, again, to be the leading resource for those who want to start a business or those who started and are struggling.
Mm. You've talked a couple of times about business planning, business strategy, business cases, building up those things. How important is it let's jump to a startup. I know the show's more about growing businesses, but for a startup, how important is to actually have a business plan at the start, or is it something that grows while you're growing?
It is very important. And it can be like a one page, and it shouldn't be 100 pages either. So I think maybe people hear the stuff about, yeah, we started on this napkin, like the founders of Google.
Mm.
Yeah, maybe that's what they did, but I can tell you for certain, then there's a lot of research, I remember, who was it? The co-founder of Starbucks, and I don't remember names. That's one of my challenges.
Okay, that's
But
fine.
I believe they went to Spain, and they visited like 500 coffee shops.
It was Italy. They went to Italy, and
Italy,
and
right?
and and because of the cafe culture, they wanted to bring it back to America with an American twist. Yeah,
So they might have had a business plan on a napkin, but they went and did real competitive research,
yeah.
real, primary market research. So I think the idea of business planning is maybe you have 7 or 8 categories in a business plan, right? So you have to spend some time being out there researching if there is a need for what you want to offer. If you
Yeah.
want to sell, I don't know, a home care for the elderly,
Yeah.
just make sure your market is not saturated with something like that.
Mm.
So do the research. What are the competitors doing? How are they positioning themselves? What services do they offer? How much are they charging? Do you have that background? Do you have that certification maybe that you need? So I'm not saying you sit down and you hire a consultant to develop this thick business plan. I'm just saying go on YouTube. You don't have to go to my video. There are a bunch of videos on business planning.
Mm.
Watch these, start a Google Doc, put these 7 or 8 categories, and over the 3, 4, 5 weeks, just do some research, talk to others, be out there, buy that service, see identify the pain points that your target audience is having today,
Yeah.
and how maybe the competition is not delivering on addressing those pain points.
Yeah.
And then maybe that could be something you pursue.
I would definitely agree with that. And you said right at the start that you're not scared of hard work, and hard work, you shouldn't be outworked by anyone else. But do you agree with the Richard Branson philosophy of the art of delegation is the most important part of business?
And I read a couple of his books, and yeah, the art of delegation is important. I think, especially for this podcast, since it's about growth, you can't, and for founders, you can't grow if you keep doing the same things that you were doing a year ago.
Mm,
So the grit, the hard work, I want to master this, whatever I do, that domain. But at one point, once you've done it, once you have a process to do it, this is the time actually to bring someone else to do it for you, with you.
mm,
So then you
mm,
can move on to bigger things. So that's, I think, part of that growth mindset is you can't be doing the same things that you were doing last year or 6 months ago. And especially we're at the beginning of a new year. So think about what is it that I was doing last year, and I figured those out, and I have this process documented. I have a template, I have a checklist, I have a PowerPoint presentation, I have whatever it is. I can then bring in some new talent. They can do it for me. I can then go and focus on growing the business. So that's delegation is really important. It does another thing about risk taking, about investing in the business, because oh my God, can I find someone to help me with this? But it is important. If you want to scale, you got to delegate, you got to hire, you got to bring others to do the things that you were doing. And so you can move on to bigger and larger things.
And one of the subjects we often come back on this show is about keeping your talent, keeping your best people. So, in your experience of growing businesses, helping other people grow businesses, what's the best way? And you've talked about culture as well. What's the best way of being able to keep your best talent?
I used to say this, you know, if you take care of your people, take care of the business.
Yeah.
And I'm taking care of the people means financially, of course, but also the way you treat the people, the way you appreciate them, the way you make sure you work really hard so they can also develop and grow. Um, you're there for them when in their maybe having some challenges at home and they need to slow down a little bit. So I think being really genuine and caring and generous with your people
Mm,
is really important, especially if you have what I would call a talent. If you have top talent, it's these days people can work from anywhere. Yes, we've had some layoffs, especially here in the US and Silicon Valley, and maybe the market is not ideal, but there's still a lot of jobs, a lot of opportunities. That employee retention is as important, maybe more important than client retention.
yeah.
And if that should be keeping you, awake at night, if you're not, if you have a churn issue with your employees, people are leaving, then you got to fix, you got to really understand why. And you can't prevent it 100%, but you got to make sure you create an environment where people want to stay with you. Some
Yeah.
people will leave for many reasons, but you want to minimize that. That's a metric that you want to keep track of, especially as you're growing and as you're doing like maybe hiring at a fast pace.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Why for you is it is a dedication to non-profits and charities? Why is that so important to you, and why do you invest so much time into that?
Yeah. So where did I get that bug? I don't remember. But I know for probably before I got married, so that's more than 36 years ago, I was doing in college, I was doing some volunteering in one way or another. I think it started with maybe I think it started with blood donation. Someone needed blood. A friend of a friend needed blood, and I didn't know how to help, so I went and did my first blood donation. And I'm fortunate to be able to donate, so I'm a lifelong blood donor.
Right.
Um, I think over 100. I don't know. I lost track. Over 100 blood donations over the last
Oh,
so many years.
amazing.
And I think it just feels good to help others. It feels good to not have that mindset where the world revolves around me, especially we're bombarded with all these messages around us about me, me, me. And I think that joy of helping others, the joy of seeing others succeed and you are being part of their journey, to me, it makes me happy. And maybe that's one of the reasons. And I think having people in your life, mentors and friends and family members who also have service as a value, I think that also is helpful.
Do you give money or do you give time or do you give both?
So I'm on the board of the local chapter for the Red Cross, the American Red Cross. And I joke with the executive director, my friend there, Ken. I said, you all take my blood, my money, and my time. Although I haven't been very active the last few months, it's been really busy. So we try to do all of the above, volunteer time. And I think over the years, now I like to volunteer. Like if a nonprofit is struggling with maybe marketing or business planning, I can, instead of just doing the actual work, I don't mind doing the actual work, whatever it is that they're doing,
Sure.
like Habitat for Humanity or something else, building a house. I love doing that. But helping them in areas where I have subject matter expertise, I think that's more impactful for them.
Mm.
And then on the financial part, I'm a big believer in sharing. So having money is good, but also sharing with others is very important. So again, fortunately, we've been able to do that as well.
Amazing. What's the plan for the next 2 to 5 years for you?
The next 2 to 5 years, I'll tell you, for the next 2024 and 2025,
Okay.
we want to blow up YouTube. We want to grow our YouTube channel. We want to build up our mailing list, our newsletter, the Daily Advisor. We believe we have something unique in terms of focusing, helping there are a lot of resources for people who want to grow their businesses. I believe there are a lot of resources in Silicon Valley. There's a lot of resources for VC-backed companies, for product companies. I think for the services and consulting businesses and for early stage founders, new business owners, I don't think there are as many resources. And
Right.
we want to be that resource for them. And like I said, we offer a lot of stuff. No, we don't have gated content, at least not yet. We have these free sessions that I offer a few times a week. Just want to build that community, share the experiences that myself and my co-founder Eric we have, helping the younger folks, I think, get the real authentic message about growing a business. There are no shortcuts. I think there's a lot of nonsense out there on YouTube and
Yeah.
elsewhere about becoming a millionaire, like an overnight millionaire. I think this is a disservice to the new generation of and I feel almost like an obligation to share and pass on what I've learned to others.
And what's the YouTube channel called?
Startup with Feras, and Feras, my first name, Feras.
Amazing. All right, we're coming to the end of the interview. I asked the same 6 questions to all of my guests. So quick fire questions. They don't need a quick fire answer. What's the best decision that you've made?
The best decision I've made in all my businesses is to have an amazing co-founder, an amazing business partner.
Have you had a business partner in all of your businesses?
And all the businesses always had a business partner.
Ah, interesting. Why is that?
I don't know, but that's how it started. And I think no one is perfect. No one is complete. You always have someone who can complement your skills, someone who can keep you in check, someone who can, if you're a very positive, optimistic, a believer type, you want someone who will balance that out. Maybe it was chance, maybe it was just destiny. I don't know, but I've always, initially, it just happened because I was looking for something, but later it was more of a conscious
Okay.
decision
Right.
to build something with someone. It's been really rewarding. It's been really helpful. It's the bond, the relationship, aside from business,
Yeah.
it's really important. It has worked out really well for me.
Yeah. I would agree with that. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
I've been given um, nothing in life that is um, not nothing. What's that quote? Someone, yeah, I'm blanking out on it, but about something that's worthwhile, something that's worth something. It requires a lot of work. If you're not putting effort and a lot of sacrifices, then you can achieve something worthwhile. And I'm butchering the quote, I'm butchering the message,
I
but the
think I
idea
know
here
what you
is
mean. If anything that's worthwhile doing is worth working hard for, sort of
exactly,
idea.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think a lot of, not a lot of people, I think people that I meet in my networking and things like that, the entrepreneur, like the solopreneur, often is looking for the lifestyle. They're looking for whether it's because of children or non-profits or just doing fun things. They often, and that is a complete generalization, but the people that I've met are looking to have the business to accompany their lifestyle choices. But there's another subset of entrepreneurs that are looking to be empire builders, and they want the corner office at the top of a building, or if it's remotely, they want the revenue number or the profitability metric. So where do you fit in that? Was always your decisions to build an empire, to build a big company that you could sell at further down the line?
I'm a capitalist at heart. So I want to grow, on a build, I want to build, I want to grow, but I'd love to. I think this, the concept of conscious capitalism, about sharing, about stakeholder capitalism, where I think those of us who are fortunate, those of us who worked hard, the personal responsibility component is really important to me. Um, and they end up making it, whatever making it is, I think is absolutely important, necessary, especially in this day and age of income inequality, and we see and I don't get into politics here, but there
Sure.
we have some societal issues around us, and I think we as individuals, we as business owners, we as entrepreneurs who end up making it, a lot of people help us along the way.
Mm,
There's no self-made millionaire. Some of us might have had to struggle a lot more than others to make it, granted, but once you make it, I think you owe it to, at least that's what I believe in, you owe it to share with others. And just as a small, not small, important point, when we sold the last business, my co-founder and I had decided before, way before, that we want to take 30% of whatever we get and share it with the team. And it wasn't a common thing because we're in the services business. It wasn't like a typical VC-backed startup. And
mm,
we did that. And that, to me, that is important because, okay, I made it, but these others who helped me and put their own blood, sweat, and tears, that's important for them to also get part of the pie. And again, that's what I tell folks: work hard, make it big, and share with others.
amazing. What a great piece of advice. Who's helped you most in your career?
Books.
Hooks, right?
I read/listen to a lot of books, audiobooks. And I think that early on, maybe I think when I attempted to do a master's earlier in engineering, and I finished all the coursework,
Uh,
never finished my thesis, never completed that, which is terrible. Then later, when I got into project management, into the business side of things, and
mm,
I fell in love with this kind of work, I did get a master's in engineering management. And I think that learning something that I was applying, and learning something, like I would read something about management and people issues and whatnot, and apply it and see it working.
mm.
That ignited this sense of learning and growing through learning. And from that point on, my goal is always to do a book a week. I fall short on it almost every year, but I get to 35 books,
That's
not too
great.
bad. But
Very
yeah,
good.
sometimes I cheat. The last couple of weeks of the year, I'll find shorter books, smaller books. But I think learning how to learn,
Yeah,
and the advice from some mentors on just investing in growth, like your own self growth, that's important.
yeah. Invest in yourself is super important. Tell me about a regret that you have.
There are a lot of personal regrets, and and here we say no regrets. I don't know. In the US, we say that a lot. And there's a book actually by, I think, Daniel Pink. He says something about regret. Actually, regrets are good. It's important to internalize those. A lot of things you do in business early on, you regret later. I remember you can do shortcuts and do things that you really shouldn't. Nothing too shady or under the table, but I remember hiring someone from a client, and so he was working with one of our clients, and then we ended up hiring one of their people to join our consulting company. And that's totally okay. There's nothing
Mm.
illegal or, but the client didn't feel it was right to take one of their stars
Right.
and have them work for us. And although again, the contract, there wasn't anything in the contract to prevent us from doing that, but I felt like it could, and the person wanted to leave on their own and they wanted to relocate. And we offered a virtual workspace, a workforce setup. But the client felt like their perception, and perception is reality, they felt like we stole their star.
Right.
And till this point, like I should have done it better. I could have waited till the guy left and made an offer. So I think those personal relationships, sometimes we're just in the heat of the moment. You want to close a deal, you want to hire someone, you want to do something, you make a shortcut, or you just don't do the prudent thing
Yeah.
and you lose a friend, or it's not about money losing a client. It's just like your reputation is really important. So
Yeah.
I think those decisions that, again, were not unethical or were not illegal. It's just were not the right thing to do
Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
at it a few years later.
Yeah. Thank you for your honesty. A lot of people brush that off with "I have no regrets," and
That is, they should read that book,
yeah,
Daniel.
it is Daniel Pinkman. Yeah, I'll maybe put that in the show notes for everyone.
Yeah.
What are you most proud of?
Personal, family, of course, family, grown 3 children and all that good stuff at work. So I think the ability to deliver on the promises that we made, including that promise to, if we sold the company, we would share 30% of the proceeds. So I think that was really important for me to build and grow the company and share. And the ability to deliver on the promise was really satisfying, rewarding, makes me sleep well at night, if you will.
That's amazing. Why do you do what you do?
My wife says, she says, you're nuts. You sold the last business. Why don't you chill? I don't know. It's a joke about this, but I remember that my last day at the last company, that after we exited, I stayed with the acquirer for a couple of years. And I think it was a Tuesday, my last day. And after all these years, I had a conference call at 7 a.m. the next day with a nonprofit. They needed some help. So I said, why did I schedule a 7 a.m. call? I think it's in the DNA, but I think you get the bug of building and growing things and helping others. And I don't know. It's just very satisfying. And I think it's just not about business, because also family, of course, we're not talking about family here. Or personally, I think I also encourage people to do things, hobbies, whatever it is, but you got to be active. I think you got to be growing, mentally, emotionally, physically, and of course in business. And I think that keeps us sharp, keeps us stronger, better as we age, as we get
Absolutely.
older.
What does legacy mean to you?
What is legacy? You're asking some tough questions, Mark.
Thank you.
Legacy. I think one of my favorite books, uh, classic by Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective
Amazing. Yeah.
Individuals, people,
Yeah.
way back then. As you can tell, I always mess up titles and names. I think he says, in the second habit, begin with end in mind. Said, imagine you are at your own eulogy. What do you
Mm,
want people to say about you?
mm.
So I think, to me, is the service to others, being generous and helping others is really important, whether in the context of business or outside of
Sure.
business.
Sure. And where can people find you if they want to reach out to you or find out more
Yeah.
information about you and your business?
Yeah, sure. So you can go to our website, startupwithferas.com. And again, Feras spelled Feras, or on our YouTube channel, youtube.com at Startup with Feras. We publish weekly videos, and then we have a weekly live stream, basically podcast style, where we cover a business topic, and then we answer all the questions that come our way throughout the week. And then we have on the website, we have the daily advisor, a daily newsletter, basically helping early stage founders or those who are thinking about starting a business to start up and also to get to 7 or 8 figures. That's what we're trying to help after it.
Amazing. Thank you, Feras. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. You've been a fantastic guest.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thanks a lot. So Ferris, so that was an interesting conversation. I think that one of the things, the common theme throughout the whole of that show was about giving back and giving to other people and helping other people. And he is involved in some amazing charities. The Red Cross, obviously, is an amazing charity, and some local things as well. And the idea of giving part of the sale of the business to employees, I think that's just the most generous, wonderful thing that an entrepreneur could do, because these people lived through the good and the bad times, and they were there with you while you were growing the business. Now, obviously, it's not their business, so they might not have exactly the same. But I think that's a fantastic way to live your life. And the guy really seemed to be hitting topics at the time when they were super relevant. So Enor, 2003, when he set it up in digital marketing, and then analytics, which was massive when I was in corporate in 2019, 18. It was like the thing. Every consulting client wanted analytics, a dashboard to see where their metrics were, and they could measure things. And as we say in marketing, if you can't measure it, it's not worth doing. So great interview. Had a lot of fun with him talking about it, this wealth of experience that he's got in entrepreneurship, and now he's there giving back to his community, to entrepreneurs. Do check out the YouTube channel. Do check out the website. Have a look, see if you are interested in those 30 minutes to have a chat with him. And there sounds like there's a lot of content. I will be checking out his YouTube channel as well, just to see what he's doing. And I'm sure I'll be able to learn things from that website, from that YouTube channel as well. Thank you, Ferris. Thank you for a wonderful conversation. And on to the next one. I really hope you've enjoyed that content. It's a really fascinating interview that I've done there. So please do, if you are enjoying this content, please do give a subscribe. It'd be really good to boost the subscriptions. It really makes a difference to the algorithm in YouTube. So thank you for that. If you do hit subscribe, hit the bell icon, and you'll get all of the content. You'll get notified when all the content is available. Thank you so much for your time. It's really appreciated. Thanks a lot.